Carl, and then Janos.
Yeah, the question was asked about where's the power, who has the power. I think one example, very recently, is about Scotland going for independence. They spent 2 years, there was a great involvement of people. Initially they thought they won't do much because the poll is showing that they'll win the no vote. When they saw that the no vote is changing, yes vote is going up, then they used all sorts of powers. The media, the BBC, they use lies to change. Also they frighten people. Recently, this week, we've heard that the Chancellor's office wrote a memo on behalf of HSBC. While HSBC's board was discussing whether they're going to make the decision to move out of Scotland, the finance people in...
So it's using the levers of power, effectively.
Exactly. So this is where they are. The power, the Queen decided she didn't want to lose Scotland, and then everyone had to do it.
Yeah.
And they did it. And one way or another, whether they rigged it or they used fear, but they did it. And that's a good example. Whatever we decide here, whoever decides anything, if those people in power don't want it, we won't get it. We need to find a different way to get it.
Carl?
I just wanted to bring in the notion of consensus in terms of this really clique. I mean, you can argue that, say, 30 years ago, and then going back throughout human history, there hasn't really been any kind of consensus about the way in which people live their lives. So now it's kind of this weird form of neo-capitalism, neoliberal capitalism that we have. Whereas before you had, you know, different notions of socialism, fascism, feudalism, whatever else. And it meant that people couldn't globally monopolize power in the same way that they do now. And through that consensus, it doesn't really explain how people get to certain positions of power, but I think it does go some way to explain how they continue to envelop it and grow and maintain that power.
I put this up because I actually think they draw I mean, obviously they conquered land, and that gives them control of land, and we talked about land being one of the sources of inequality, and therefore that gives, if you've got money, it gives you power. This comes from 1912, and basically that picture is the Federal Reserve. Now, Andrew Jackson, who was elected in 1828, I think, or 6, called central banks an engine of corruption. Anybody who's heard me talk before will know that the Federal Reserve is privately owned. It's not a government institution, and it controls everything. And basically the Federal Reserve is controlled by 8 families. So they are members of the ruling clique.
To that, there is a country inside London called London City.
City of London.
Yeah, and just to make sure everybody understands that, it's really a country, and the police that is outside of that specific territory has nothing to do with that. So it's internal laws, and it's related with the Federal Reserve and private companies or private companies that make the money that we kind of use to give them back to them.
The other source of their power is their control over corporations, transnational corporations. Now this comes from a study published in the New Scientist in 2011 of 43,060 transnational corporations. And what they discovered was that by looking at, and this is public records, shareholders, directors and common directorships, that 147, what they described as super entities, control 40% of that network of 43,060 corporations, and they control 60% of their revenues. So you have the Federal Reserve controlling the banks, and then within this 147 super entities, of the top 20, many of them are banks, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Barclays, etc. Of the top 50 super entities, 45 of them are financial corporations. So the combination of land and finance gives those people at the top of the tree a huge amount of power. I think Jude, sorry.
I don't think we ever reached a consensus about who the people at the top are explicitly. I think people touched on
Okay. Does somebody want to address that?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. Yeah, I mean, I think in England we can have a look at. I think you mentioned the Queen, but like going to her and saying that she should obey the laws. But I think that actually we should not underestimate the power of the royal family. And I think we are taught that the royal family are just a figurehead, and that's not true. And actually, the royal family do have huge amounts of influence and wealth. I mean, there's partly the constitutional setup where, unless our whole constitutional setup gives huge amounts of sovereignty to the crown, which isn't the same as the monarchy, but it is the kind of the body of the state. So where that body of the state has the power in so much as it hasn't been given to Parliament. So on the whole, it's the sovereign and the elites that have the decision to go to war and make huge amounts of decision. But we're just going back to the monarchy as well. So if you consider the monarchy in relation to the City of London, so the City of London is the aldermen of the City of London are elected by the livery companies, and the livery companies are related to the Freemasons, and the Freemasons are headed up by one of the members of the royal family. So there are all these interrelationships going on there, which are really, really ancient. And we also have the issue of land ownership. So we have the issue of the Queen being an enormous landowner. We have now people who are in the House of Lords, Cameron, who is part of the landed gentry. So there are all these interrelationships between the monarchy, the landed gentry, Freemasonry, the Corporation of London, which are ancient and existing structures, and then also come together with the more modern structures around corporations.
I'm going to be very tight on time because I don't want to cut into what Ray's got to say. So we're going to end very quickly. I would say that there's not just the British royal family. Bilderberg involves Dutch royal family and other royal families as well as rich industrialists. So there's a group of people. I think Joe, Linda, Dan, please be very quick. You've got 3 minutes and I'll cut you short if you're too long.
I don't mind.
Linda?
It seems to me it's still about a collusion of capital and politics, because all of this could be changed without that collusion between politics.
We'll come back to that. That's a good point. Dan?
I wanted to say that at the moment there are 3 superpowers who are in competition with each other. There's the US, Russia and China. And the ruling elite of those 3 are not the same. In fact, they are opposed to each other. And what's going on is the rivalry of the great power.
Right. And on that note, I'd just like to round this up because I think Dan actually has hit on quite a good point. My view would be, certainly this comes out of the work we've done at Critical Thinking, is that we have one superpower, hegemonic superpower, and it is part of this equation. Its current manifestation is the US empire. Before that, it was the British Empire. And the superpowers that Dan alluded to aren't really superpowers. They are the barriers in the road to a one world government and our total enslavement. And on that note, I want to go back to what Linda said, that it's this collusion of politics and capital. Now, this diagram will take far too long to explain, but essentially it's the levers of power exerting division, distraction, ecocide, oppression, all the other evils on these people, us, and we create the wealth through our labour and our creativity, and then it's sucked up back to the top through rents, taxes and debts. That's basically the way the world works. And so what we're looking to do is to get to something like this, where the wealth that we have is actually shared. So the land which belongs to no one and the resources are shared equally, so that we have unconditional citizens' income, going back to Andy's point about the fact that we just don't have enough jobs. David Graeber talks about bullshit jobs. There are so many jobs that are of no value to anyone, or even of negative value to most of us. And we could provide public services. We could have debt-free money. But the most important element is what Linda was talking about, is this getting rid of this collusion of money and politics. We need to control this structure, and we need to devolve all the things that are community orientated to communities, things that are necessarily governed by regions down to regions and so on. And with technology today, we could have a global government, but a global government of the people rather than of the rather unsavoury picture we saw before. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ray Sheath, who has come up with, well, I'll let him explain it, but basically it's using the system to become the system to change the system. Over to you, Ray.